We are back on Morning Line. Our guest, malpractice attorney here in town, Clint Kelly. And Clint, we've got a phone caller that waited through the break, and we'll take Tracy next. Tracy, good morning. Hi, Tracy.
Oh, good morning, Nick and Attorney Kelly. I've got a couple of comments and a question. First of all, Attorney Kelly, wherever you are, if that backdrop is true, I wish I was there. and two, I heard Attorney Kelly talking about the recent legislation that he thinks will pass, probably will, here in Tennessee. And I was thinking it's probably unconstitutional. So you can comment on that later. But my main question is, if you could speak to this, what are the rights of employees under ADA who are on sick leave? If you can respond to that, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, American Disabilities Act employees who are on sick leave Clint, do you need any more detail from her on that? Or do you think you can handle some background on that?
Yeah, Tracy, I sure wish I could answer that. I am woefully ignorant when it comes to the ADA in terms of what its legal requirements are. I wish I knew, because it's a very important law, and it's one that I think, frankly, some new life is going to be breathed into it if there is a President Biden. But with that said, I'm glad she brought up the constitutional issue. It's a great point Tracy mentioned. I think that if there is an attempt to apply that law to cases past, or actually before the law is enacted, in other words, if the law is enacted, say today is August 12th. Yeah. If they try to apply the law to cases that accrued yesterday or before, I think there's a serious constitutional argument to be made that it is a ex post facto law. That's the Latin word meaning you're after the fact. And there's a constitutional provision that forbids laws from taking rights away from people before laws are passed. And so there will be a constitutional issue going backwards. Going forward, though, unfortunately, the legislators have police power over the laws. They can pass whatever immunity provisions they want to pass, and the courts are going to enforce it 99 times out of 100. So we're going to be stuck with these laws going forward. I think there's a sunset provision in 2022 based on the text that I saw. But all these cases in the meantime, we're going to be stuck with some bad situations where that law is going to be used by bad actors to protect bad conduct, and so people are going to get shafted as a result of it.
Clint, I know obviously you're busy right now. Your hands are full with some of these COVID cases, but I wanted to ask you too then, so much about the pandemic and the virus and all this, and you almost lose sight of the fact when you hear about the occupancy rate in the hospitals and the ICU, that's all COVID related, but that, you know, I mean, the hospitals were busy and, in my opinion, packed before COVID even hit. People are still getting sick and ill from other things, are they not? And I guess just recently, many hospitals have just started doing, surgeries that are elective surgeries, which they had cut out for a while. But what's happening with that front and as it relates to malpractice law?
Yeah. What I'm hearing from my doctor friends is that the hospitals have done a pretty good job accommodating the virus, treating the patients that need it, and maintaining sufficient resources to deal with the day-to-day elective procedures, the sicknesses and the illnesses that we all have to deal with in a hospital setting. They have done a very effective job. And Exhibit A is the fact that I haven't gotten hardly any calls of people saying that they had their care mismanaged in the hospital, people who were COVID exposed. I've heard nothing but praise for what the hospitals have done. So they've been very effective in handling this crisis. And I think that is a role model going forward for other types of situations we're going to have where there's a pandemic or epidemic. This ain't going to be the last bug, Nick.
No,
that's what's kind of scary about this. We're all going to have to learn from this. The best medical minds will tell you this is the beginning, not the end. And we're all going to have to learn how to deal with these situations as they come up. But the hospitals have done a very good job in being able to continue on with their business. What has changed, at least what I'm being told has changed, fewer people are going to the hospital. Fewer people are going to clinics. because they're scared of catching it.
Right. That's what I was going to say. I mean, I don't want to go to a hospital anyway. And as you've said, hospitals are a sick place. You want to avoid them unless, of course, you have no choice. But, man, I don't want to go to a hospital now, even though I know they have special sections for COVID. But there's a lot of reasons I don't want to go anywhere near a medical facility.
Exactly. And a lot of people share your opinion and my opinion on that. And that's shown up in the census numbers. They are not having the same number of admissions to hospitals. And clinics are having difficulty maintaining their census because patients are choosing not to go because they're afraid.
Gotcha. Let's go next to Ricky. Ricky, good morning. What's your question, Ricky?
Yeah, about these nursing homes. When an elderly person runs out of, can't care, don't pay for them no more, even though they're still sick and messed up, they still release them. How do you say about that?
Well, releasing them, and that's a little off point on this, but I mean, once someone is truly destitute, if you go into a Medicaid qualified or Medicare qualified facility, there's waiting lists for it. That's when they'll pick it up. But a lot of people think, Clint, you know this, nursing home care is not paid for by Social Security or Medicare. It's not. Now, once you're destitute, yeah, that's the safety net, and they'll, some of these accept those payments. But I don't know that they just throw people out on the streets if you're there to begin with.
No, Ricky, has made a real point. It does happen, Nick. I don't want to point fingers at anybody. It's not, that's a whole separate discussion. I'm not an expert in that, but I can tell you from, it happens. And it's very unfortunate when it does. The more pervasive issue are people who don't have alternatives. In other words, they pay a rate to go to a particular nursing home where the care is substandard, but they lack the resources to transfer them somewhere else. That's a more pervasive problem. But what Ricky is saying is true. It does happen in some instances, and it's shameful when it does.
Yeah, it sure is. Very sad. Clint, let's talk then just in general terms again. COVID, and we can get more calls along those lines. But with regard to medical malpractice, the standard stuff, we haven't hit on this, and I always do at the top of the show. The one-year statute of limitations remains. There's nothing that's changed with any of this litigation right now, and people need to be aware of that when they're thinking about a situation, whether it's COVID-related or not, right?
Sure. I mean, that law is hard as a rock. It's not going to change. You've got 1 year from the date that you discover your injury to give pre-suit notice, meaning to notify the doctor or the hospital of your intent to sue. You go 1 day past that 1 year, you've lost your claim. The doors to the courthouse are shut on you. 25% of cases that I have looked at in my 27-year career have been tossed in the trash because the client waited too long. You just don't do that. If you think you've been injured, seriously injured by a hospital or seriously injured in a clinic, you pick up the phone and you call because the call's free and you don't pay a dime unless you recover money. It's one of the best deals going. I hate to hear from people who say, well, I thought I would just get better. Or, my husband told me you don't really want to sue because it's not, right to do that. It's unchristian, whatever. And then they've waited too long and they can't earn a living, or they have too many medical expenses, or they don't heal properly. And they call somebody like me and I have to give them the most difficult speech I ever have to give clients, which is, I'm sorry you slept on your rights.
Oh, gosh, and you've given a few of those, I know. Listen, we have to take a break. When we come back, our final segment with Clint Kelly. And by the way, he is here in Middle Tennessee. He's not really, where is that again, Clint?
That is Half Moon Bay outside of San Francisco.
I think we both wish we were there. Let's take a break. We'll be back with more right after this.